Good evening. We're just going to give some people a few minutes to join the Zoom. If you would like to drop in the chat where you're joining us from, that would be great. Ooh, from Canada. That's exciting. I don't know if we've had anyone from Canada, Jordan. Welcome. California. Awesome. Ooh, Santa Barbara. I love visiting Santa Barbara. So nice to see some new names joining us tonight. Well, we're going to get started here. We try to keep our webinars to exactly an hour. So welcome to Backbones, Women and SCI Health Talks. This program is funded by the Christopher Reeve Foundation. My name is Emily Lacey, and I'm the program coordinator. Tonight's webinar is being recorded and will be sent to everyone who registered via email and uploaded to our YouTube channel, where you can also find past recordings. Our wonderful captioner tonight is Joe Gale. To enable captions, click the live transcript option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're new to Backbones, our organization is committed to helping people with spinal cord injuries and similar disabilities find connection and community. We do this by hosting events both in person and virtually, facilitating one-on-one peer support and providing resources to individuals with spinal cord injuries and their families when they're trying to navigate life post-injury. I encourage you to check out our website at www.backbonesonline.com to find out more information about our programs. We are a community-led program that seeks to bring awareness and education about women's health in the context of SCI. Our topics and format were the results of 2 community listening sessions where women with SCI from across the country provided insights. To continue to be community-led and directed, we will send an email tomorrow with a short survey, as well as a copy of this webinar, which you may freely share. The link to the survey will be dropped in the chat momentarily. We thank you in advance for filling this out. In addition to this recorded webinar, we also have a private only for women with SCI small discussion groups to unpack the conversation tonight and share personal experiences and support. If you're interested in the small group, please go to our website at backbonesonline.com and click the program tab. The link will also be dropped in the chat. I will introduce our 2 amazing guest speakers shortly here. We will have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A at the end of the webinar. You are welcome to submit questions for our speakers, either through the Q&A option on Zoom or send them directly to me in the chat. I will read questions out loud that are submitted. If at any point you would like Ginger or Vicki to clarify something, please use the raise your hand option and type your clarifying question in the chat. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Vicki Hill Kowaleski and Ginger Lane. In the summer of 1986, Vicki was injured in a diving accident that left her with C6 quadriplegia at the age of 22. After competing in wheelchair sports for several years, Vicki attended grad school at the Illinois Institute of Technology and earned her master's degree in rehabilitation counseling. She moved to Connecticut, got married, raised a family with her husband. She recently retired after a 24-year career as a vocational rehabilitation counselor and supervisor for the Connecticut Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. Vicki and her husband, Bill, have been married for 28 years. They have 4 grown children and 3 grandkids. Ginger Lane is a dancer, choreographer, and teacher, working in physically integrated dance in the Chicago area. Having first received a dance scholarship to the prestigious Interlochen Center for the Arts and graduating from Northwestern's renowned theater program. She worked at Chicago's Independent Living Center, Access Living, for 31 years. First as director of peer counseling services, and then as coordinator of its arts and culture project, curating and producing artistic and cultural events. Ginger conceived of and was the founder and artistic director of Counterbalance, the Power of Integrated Dance, a showcase for dancers with and without disabilities from 2008 to 2020, in conjunction with Momenta Dances and Bodies of Work until she retired in 2020. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Vicki and Ginger. I'll now hand the webinar over to the two of you.
I'm Rebecca Torres. I'm gonna add a spotlight to myself and to Ginger and Vicki. There we go. I'm Rebecca Torres. I'm executive director of Backbones, and I will be moderating the conversation today. I'm super excited to be in conversation with both Ginger and Vicki. I have known Ginger probably right after I was injured. I have known about you, so it's been many, many years. And Vicki, I recently met over Zoom, but I have also known of her. We're all three women from the Chicago area. And I guess we'll get started. And first I'd like to just kind of get a little background and history of the two of you. You both know each other, right? And you've known each other for a very long time. So I'd love to hear maybe a brief story of how you two met. I think that's always gives a little nice context to get to know you a little more.
Well, I'll say, this is Ginger, I'll say thank you, Rebecca, for having us, and Emily. It's a great opportunity, I think, for us to share with each other issues of spinal cord injury and how we progress through life. So when I was first injured, I was at the Rehab Institute of Chicago and trying, of course, to cope with this new body that I had. But I'm a fairly resilient person. And so in working through my issues, I had a pretty positive attitude. And one day, one of the nurses or therapists said, you know, there's this gal on the floor. And at this point, I was, of course, an outpatient, but she said, there's this gal on the floor that I think it may be great if the two of you connected. Would you mind going and talking to her? And I went into a room and there was Vicki lying in bed, newly injured, right, Vic?
Oh, yeah. And as I said before, I remember when I first met Ginger, Ginger was very chipper and positive, and I was like, not feeling it. But, you know, as we went on, Ginger and I would meet up from time to time. I remember one time Ginger had just gotten this new van and she was showing me how the hand controls and everything work. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. You can actually drive. And yeah, and so it's weird because we did lose connections with each other. But then I found out your daughter lived in the same building as my parents.
That's right.
So my stepmother got in touch with Ginger and then we reconnected. So, you know, it's a small world.
A small world, yeah.
It is
funny. Go ahead.
Well, actually, it is because your stepmother is also a film producer. So she's very active in the arts and was very involved with Access Living, where I was working. And because I'm a dancer and creator in the arts, she and I connected very easily. So it sort of becomes a small world. And what I have found is that no matter what your disability is, or when you acquire it, or if it's congenital, we're sort of one big family because we share so many of the same issues that we can easily relate to each other. And that's what I have found so important and great about the peer-to-peer relationship.
Yeah, and I'd love to go into that a little bit. And I know, Vicki, you said, you know, when you first saw Ginger, you were like, oh, I don't want to talk to her. I felt similarly too. When I was recently injured, I was injured 27 years ago, and someone came in and I thought the same thing. Like, I did not want to talk to that person. And, you know, it's unfortunate because when I did start talking to people with disabilities and spinal cord injuries, it opened up my world so much. And I was like, why did I wait so long? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, you know, how peer support, or maybe the lack of peer support from other women with spinal cord injuries, how that can make a difference, especially over the span of time in adjusting to changes in your body. You know, it's really important right at the beginning, but, you know, living with this injury long term, you know, there's a lot of things that happen and change. And so I'd love to hear how you've been able to stay connected or find support with other women or other people with spinal cord injuries.
I've been like kind of weaving in and out. In the beginning, I was involved with wheelchair sports, and I learned all the tricks of the trade from, you know, women with all different levels of injury. You know, I was traveling around the country, just hopping on a plane, going wherever. And it was so eye-opening to kind of realize you could still do everything, just a little differently. And then when I got into working in the field of vocational rehabilitation, I had to wear a different hat, and I couldn't align myself with individuals with disabilities because I had to be careful with boundaries. A lot of people were thinking, oh, she's in a wheelchair, so she's just going to help me get my modified van and get me to school and do all this stuff. And I'm like, but I work for the state of Connecticut for the Bureau of Rehab for vocational rehab, and we have, you know, policies, and I know the whole field of voc rehab can be cumbersome and not good. So I did my best that I could to really treat people like people, and then help them build up their strengths and interests and stuff like that. Now that I've gotten older and I've retired, I'm back in reconnecting with women with disabilities, and we're commiserating about, you know, all the aches and pains and, you know, all that stuff. And it's good because I don't feel like I'm all by myself. For a while, I felt like I was by myself because I was working and I was in the quote unquote, you know, able-bodied world. Weirdly enough, working in vocational rehab, there were like 2 of us in a wheelchair, all the years that I worked. Kind of weird.
That's so interesting, Vicki, because I didn't have that experience. As a peer counselor and then working at an independent living center, the focus was always on connecting with people with disabilities. So it's a very different mindset. But I know that initially, when I first became disabled, through word of mouth, I had a skiing accident, and I was connected with a woman who had she was a champion skier, and she'd also had a skiing accident, which rendered her a C5 quad. And I spoke with her on the phone a few times, and she'd written a book. And it was the first instance that I had of hearing from somebody who was just like me, who was involved in sports. I was very active in sports. She was, and her life changed. And then the next time I spoke with someone, was when she came to see me at rehab, and all she talked about was, you can still have sex. Don't pay attention to anybody who tells you you can't. And I said to myself, I'm married. I already have 3 children. I don't really need to know about sex as a disabled person. But it was so refreshing and eye-opening for her to be so open, genuine about what we're going through as women with SCI. It's just a different world. And I have felt through all these years that it was very important to constantly connect with other women. And as I mentioned earlier, it almost doesn't matter what your disability is, because we have so many of the same issues. Lack of access, lack of acceptance, difficulties with attitudinal barriers, difficulty with accessible housing and employment. It was great that you found employment with vocational rehab. And I found employment with an independent living center. But these are issues that we all go through. And the sense of isolation, which you felt all those years, I felt initially, but once I started connecting with other people, I was no longer isolated. And that was a great benefit to me. So it's kind of just a different route that we each took.
I love that. And so I kind of want to go into those things you were speaking about, Vicki, you know, just all the changes and having to learn new things about our bodies as we start aging as women. I just turned 30 or 40, not 30, 40. And I know that
but that was a good slip.
Right.
30 plus 10.
And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you know, you're going to need to get a mammogram. And then recently I also went to the eye doctor, and, you know, I need glasses now. And just like I have osteoporosis, and these are things that I'm starting to think about. And, you know, there isn't a lot of information out there. And I often turn to other women with spinal cord injuries, either on like Facebook groups or different groups, just to learn about these things. And so I wanted to hear from you both, you know, what has your experience been navigating these new changes in our bodies?
Well, for me, you know, I learned early on that spinal cord injury is an instant form of osteoporosis. I mean, you develop it right away. And so the aging process that we all go through started much earlier once you got an SCI, because we don't do weight bearing. Lots of women will have fractures. But one thing I found very interesting was that, because I was 44 when I had my disability, acquired my disability. And so I was almost at the point where I was going to go through menopause. And I had a lot of sweating, dysreflexia, right? And one day, and I would hear friends talk about going through menopause and having hot flashes and all that. And I never experienced that except once. And it was so obvious and clear to me that it was a hot flash. And I said, oh God, I guess I'm getting older. And it was so it was so very different from the sweats that we get. And I also went through the idea of glasses, and you can see I'm wearing AirPods so that I can hear better, because and you know what's interesting? I think I dealt with my spinal cord injury really pretty well. I'm having a terrible time dealing with the loss of hearing. I fight it. I hate it. I wear hearing aids. They just do not replicate natural hearing. And to me, that's, and that is very isolating as well when you can't hear in your environment. So that's been kind of my experience. Never mind about spinal cord. It's the other things. It's the, and some of it is just normative aging. We're all going to have it. We have to just deal with it.
Yeah. So when in 1995, I got pregnant with my daughter, and that was an experience. And that's why I only had one child, because I had really bad morning sickness, and then I had UTIs. So I had her naturally, and she was born on the anniversary of my injury. My injury was July 25th, 1986, and she was born July 25th, 1995. So it was interesting to me what happened with my body through that process. And then, getting older. Ginger, I know what you mean about the osteoporosis setting in. I found out I had osteoporosis in 2009 when I took a dive out of my chair and I broke my femur, my right femur and my left tibia, and didn't know it. I was like in shock, and my husband like put me back in the chair, and I said, "Oh, okay, let's keep going." We were up in Niagara Falls, and then when to transfer, I was like, my leg is a little weird. Ugh, it was horrible. So yeah, that's when I realized that I was a little more fragile than I knew. And we got to be careful watching. Wear thicker shoes, because you bump your feet on stuff, you're gonna break your toes just bumping into a wall. As far as menopause and stuff was concerned, I felt the same way with you, Ginger. I didn't really have a whole lot of symptoms. I was having really bad periods. Then I was anemic. So my doctor did an ablation, and that solved everything. I felt so much better after that. Stopped being anemic. But I'm 58 right now. I feel a lot older. Just, I was in the hospital a week and a half ago because I had a kidney infection. And, it's like, but, these things just happen. We have to take care of ourselves. One of the things that I think is really important through the years is take care of your kidneys, see the urologist, go get your mammograms, although it's such a pain and I feel so violated. I don't know about you ladies, but people are like grabbing and trying to get me to get in a position. It's really hard. But you have to kind of laugh about it, I guess. I call it the George Foreman grill. So
that's a great term.
Do you feel that healthcare providers were able to give you the information that you wanted or were seeking for?
I have to say that the OBGYN group that I have, it's a huge group of doctors. And when I was pregnant, they all met with me because they never knew who was going to deliver my daughter. So they all met with me and it went really well. They did a great job. As far as, things that I find annoying is going to get, like if you have to get a pap smear or pelvic exam, those stupid chairs. I mean, I don't understand why they can't just have you just lay on a regular nice stretcher so you don't feel like you're going to fall off the stupid bench that they have you on. You know, that's the only complaint I have. I feel like sometimes you have to conform to what they think is accessible as opposed to what's easiest for us, you know, to get things taken care of. And I think sometimes that keeps people from going to the doctor because it can be uncomfortable.
I was very lucky in that we started in Chicago a health resource center for women with disabilities at the Rehabilitation Institute. And so we kind of insisted that that when we would go for mammograms, that we would have an accessible machine. The first time I went for a mammogram, they asked me to stand up. I said, well, I have a spinal cord injury, I don't stand. Well, can't you just stand for a couple of minutes? We'll hold you up. And I said, no, we have to advocate for ourselves so much and kind of fight the system. And I agree with you about the exam tables, but it is so critically important that we not sort of sheepishly go along what the medical system will say we have to do, and insist that they make things more accessible for us. It's hard, but if we don't push it, nobody will.
True.
That's true. I wanted to go into, you know, as we are starting to have more aches, pains, and just like not being able to physically move the same, you know, we're already paralyzed, but sometimes it feels like we're becoming more disabled, or like if you injure yourself, you just feel like really, really disabled. And so how has that appeared in your life? And when you feel like that, and have you needed to maybe have more caregivers around to help you? And if so, you know, how have you navigated that? Needing more assistance.
Well, one of the things that that I've done to try to mitigate that part of aging is to keep exercising. And of course, my exercise is through dance. So knowing three things. I mean, the most important things, of course, for spinal cord is, you know, bowel and bladder issues, bowel, bladder, and skin. So keeping those things in check, eating very healthy foods and drinking tons and tons and tons of water. I feel sometimes that I'm a lake because I'm just constantly drinking, and constantly moving my upper body as much as I can. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get lots of aches and pains. I certainly do. But I think trying to keep yourself as active as you can, both physically and socially and intellectually and culturally, is vital and important in living and leading a healthy lifestyle. And as I mentioned earlier, connecting with other people and talking about these issues that we all have that are intrinsic to living with a spinal cord injury. But there's one other thing that I think is important, and that's kind of going with the flow as we age, knowing that there are things that are kind of going to break down. I'm having more bathroom issues than I used to have. It takes me longer to go to the bathroom and to shower than it used to. So I do need more assistance, and that can be very frustrating. And for the first 29 years of my injury, I had one personal care assistant, one PA. She was fantastic. She had the nerve to retire. And so for the last 7 years, it's been hard in trying to keep a really good PA. And so I find but these are things that we kind of have to deal with. And going with the flow means accepting the fact that we're getting older, trying to accept the fact that I don't hear very well, which is hard, trying to, and moving more slowly, and being a little more, you know what, being more accepting of your changing body. That's something that I think we want to be just as we were 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, but we aren't. And whether you've got a disability or not, we're going to get older. And in a way, isn't it wonderful that we are getting older? So maybe kind of be grateful for the things that we do have and the things that we do. I think about you, Rebecca, and the enormous things that you have accomplished with your life and continue to accomplish and do. And the same with you, Vicki. It's pretty remarkable. And I, as the old bag, know that you're going to be an old bag someday too. So maybe accept and celebrate the fact that, yeah, your body gives out, your body changes. It was very distressing for me when I had to move from a manual chair to a power chair. I was really upset about that. But you know what? I looked on the other side and I saw that it was very freeing. I no longer had the shoulder pain that I was experiencing by pushing the manual chair. So along with the diminishing ability comes some positive stuff. At least that's my attitude.
Well, that's really great advice, even, you know, and to think about it also just like for people that are newly injured too, you know, giving some compassion to our bodies that they're different and they're gonna evolve and change. So thank you for that. Vicki, did you have something to say?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess I try to do like what Ginger said, is to be grateful for every single day. And, you know, I find that I too, as I've gotten older and my understanding, it's because of, you know, changes in your metabolism, changes in your body structure, your hormones. So dealing with that stupid bowel program, just, it's annoying. So I just have to be, okay, if that's the problem, I'll just deal with it. You know, my husband luckily is very helpful, and he's helps me with anything I need help with. I help him with stuff he needs help with. You know, right now we're looking into a sure hands lift, because I can get on and off of my bed when I'm dressed, but I can't get on and off of my shower chair. So my husband was always pivot transferring me, but he's not getting any younger. So we're looking into, you know, other technologies so that I can get on and off of the shower chair, you know, to protect both of us. You know, that's a change. It's kind of scary, but, you know, I think that, you know, as we get older, just, you know, try to find things that we enjoy. I mean, my identity was with my job. You know, I loved my job, got up in the morning, worked from 7:30 until 7 at night. And, And then when I retired, I was like, now what am I doing? But, trying to keep busy, spending time with the kids and the grandkids. One of the things that's hard, biggest problem is that I can get into my daughter's apartment, but the other kids, I can't get into their homes. And a lot of times it's like, hey, come on over, everyone. We're going to do cake. We're going to do this or that. I'm like, well, we have to do it at my house because I can't get into their houses. I don't expect everybody in the family to make their homes accessible, but it's, I think,
why not? Why not, Vicki?
I do have a ramp actually, so I can get into my stepdaughter's house. But the other kid's house I can't get into. But it's like friends and stuff like that. So that's why we make plans to meet at different places. Well, not in the past 2 years, but so this past 2 years has been a little interesting trying to stay COVID free. But so as far as starting out, I couldn't do anything. And then I was very independent, was swimming and racing and then going to school. And then when I hit my 40s, that's the same thing. Glasses, now at this point too, I don't feel comfortable driving. I don't feel strong enough to drive. So, I'm slowing down with that, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of goes into my next question about, well, actually, I wanted to read a comment too that someone in the chat wrote. Lily said, it's isolating to not get into family members' houses. I miss that a lot. And she also mentioned that she swims and gets frequent massages and acupuncture, which really
acupuncture is wonderful.
You both were like, whoa. So I
love
that's great. I get a lot of upper back tension now. And I also, another great thing about moving into a power chair was that this power chair has a tilt. So I can tilt back on it. I don't have a headrest, but at least I have a tilt, which is kind of nice. And I had the same experience, Vicki, as you in not being able any longer to transfer to my shower chair. Getting in and out of bed is no problem. Getting in and out of the driver's seat of my van is no problem. But if I transfer to a shower chair, I'm going to have skin breakdown, which is a no-go for us, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah, and that presents issues. But there was something that when I was saying about gratitude and all that, I think one of the things that helps to keep us young and active is to grab every opportunity we can that comes along. And I mean, I have a kind of a philosophy is I don't say no. Back in the early 80s, there was this Nancy Reagan thing about drugs, and that was just say no. Well, I say just say yes. Every opportunity that comes along, because that and vital and engaged. And I use one other technique that maybe sounds a little Pollyanna-ish, but I don't know. I use humor a lot, and it can get me through some bad situations.
Yeah, and you reminded me of something that you both sort of touched upon, was that, just keeping that maintenance of our bodies, and how important that is. For me, that has been super important to, I've realized that that's how I stay healthy, and that's how I'm able to continue to do the things that I want to do, because I am taking care of my body, I'm eating right, and I'm making sure that trying to do my best to not get UTIs and not get pressure sores and things like that. And I'm lucky that I haven't had many experiences like that. And so I think that's important, an important thing you both sort of touched on. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I wanted to go into a little bit on your outlook on disability and how that's changed over the years. For example, like many people when they're first injured, you know, it's a lot of focus on recovery and physical therapy. And then over time, you know, I remember I was very self-conscious about my body and about my abilities. Now I'm at a point where I feel like my career is really important, and advocating for my community is important. And I'm curious where you guys are at, where you both are at. You both have just really impressive accomplishments, and how has your outlook changed over the years?
I do less, but I do it with a lot of love. I'm happy with what I can do. And I'm also, I put a lot more stock now in relationships, I think, than I used to, because I was kind of like you, Rebecca, in being very focused on career and doing things and on physical access to things, and especially working in the field of disability rights and activism. It was critical, but the world has done. I think attitudes are light years. I won't say light years, but attitudes are much better by the non-disabled population than they used to be. I find I see many more people out in the community who have disabilities, and we all kind of nod and say hi. So there's an instant recognition that we're all in the same boat. But accepting maybe that, you know, it's not a little bit of wisdom. As I get older, it's not a question of turning back the clock or even stopping the clock. And I just kind of say, at this point, I say, just ignore the damn clock. You're getting older, you know, deal with it. And my body changes. I'm not as thin as I used to be. I have lots of bags under my eyes, wrinkles on my face, but I get those anyway if I'm surviving. And the only thing I kind of say is, don't dress like your grandmother, because it'll make you feel old.
I love that advice.
Never mind how you, yeah. And you know, I don't look the way I used to look, but hey, it's not as important as it was. Even as a dancer, where how you look and how you move is very important to your career. Well, I can't do what I used to do. So I have to be kind to myself. I think that's a critical thing. I think we all have to be kind to ourselves. And just kind of deal with it. And not be so critical of ourselves, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I think for me, I remember, you know, when my very first outing with the RIC and the crew that we had, and I remember how horrible it was. I remember getting into the restaurant, trying to push this chair that was not fitted for me, didn't have like the little pegs so I could push. Had they used red tubing on the rim so I could try to push. And I just remember feeling so self-conscious, and I got into the restaurant and I felt like everyone was staring at us. And I just went in the bathroom and I cried the whole time. I was like, nope, I'm not coming out there. Just tell me when you're leaving. And then, you know, I left on the, you know, went back to the hospital or to the rehab. And I was just like, oh, it's horrible. And then I decided that I was going to be like, all right, because I was really, really self-conscious. I said, all right, I'm going to pretend I'm somebody famous. So if people are staring at me, it's because I'm famous. And that
There
just
you
helped
go.
me get through everything. And even to this day, sometimes I see people will come up to me and they'll, you know, oh, bless your heart. And this, and I'm like, thanks. And I'll just keep rolling. You know, that's very nice. Thanks for blessing me. I need all the blessings I can get. I used to get annoyed by that, but now I'm like, that's cool. Love it. I think what I've found too is that people are less curious. And I think I don't have as many people treating me weirdly. You know, I used to have people that would be talking to my husband and not to me, talking to the kids and not to me. But I think it's just, you know, more, I guess, normal for people to be out and about, rolling or walking, wearing crutches, whatever. I think now as I've gotten older, I'm more of a hermit. I like my quiet time. I like spending time at home with our dogs. And, you know, every once in a while going to a movie, going out to dinner. I do not like flying in planes anymore. And if I can avoid it, I will, because I feel like the transportation, the transporting on planes has gotten worse. It's not good. So we're planning a trip to drive down to Key West in a couple of weeks. So we're going to take that train, the auto train that goes from Virginia to Florida. So, you know, yeah, you can just put that van right up on the train, and my husband rests for 800 miles. So, you know, just trying to find doing things differently, but still enjoying our lives. You know, my husband's dealing with tons of aches and pains. He doesn't have a disability per se, but, you know, he's 62. He's run his body down into the ground. So, you know, like I liked what you said, Ginger, about don't dress like your grandma. My grandmother, who lived to be 102 and a half, was always dressed to the nines. Wow. I need to dress like her because I am the biggest slob. Throw a sweatshirt on and like stretchy pants, and I'm all, that's cool. But, you know, like it's just funny.
Well,
but you said something.
Oh, go ahead, Ginger.
I just wanted to comment on what you said a couple of minutes ago, Vicki. Because I do remember you, by the way, as being reticent and self-conscious and pretty shy, being embarrassed when you're out in public. Although when you're out with a group of other wheelchair users, you know, we can take over the world.
That's for sure.
Yeah, but you said you didn't like people staring at you. So that brings to mind Susan Nussbaum's wonderful play and then book called Staring Back. Whoever stares at you, just stare right back at them. And it gives you power when you can do that, which you've learned over the years. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rebecca.
No, I was not, I don't remember what I was going to say, but that is a good reference. Susan Nussbaum, also a woman with a spinal cord injury, playwright, I believe, and author, mm-hmm. and activist. So yeah, I don't know if Emily, if you can find a link and throw it in the chat for people, that would be great. But we have about 10 minutes left. If anyone has questions, please submit them in the chat or raise your hands or however you'd like to communicate. While we wait for some questions, I do have another one I'd like to ask. You know, thinking about the future of our community and thinking about other women with spinal cord injuries and disabilities, what would you like to see for our future? And I know I didn't give you this question beforehand, so you can take a second to think if you want.
Honestly, for me, I would like to see for the future a little bit. I mean, when I was in the hospital this last time, the medical care was stellar. I was, you know, it was in Yale. I'm in Connecticut, so it was at the Yale, the St. Raphael's campus with Yale University Medical Center. And I thought that they really did a really nice job. They were asking me, how do we do this? What do we need to do? How can we help you? And I'd love to see that the up and coming nurses and nursing staff and doctors continue to treat people more like people instead of like, oh, a gallbladder or a stomach or, you know, a kidney or whatever. And as far as like, I'd also like to see the transportation, like airlines, be a little more. I just think that the riding on planes, I mean, I have my stepson and his wife live in California. I'm not driving all the way to California, but trying to fly, it's impossible. You can't get a direct flight. When you try to get on the plane, they load you up in this little skinny thing that doesn't have a high enough backrest. It's awful. So I'd like to see maybe if we can get together and make that work better. But it seems like the airline industry has gotten worse. In the 90s, I had no problems flying around everywhere. It was just fine. And now it's terrible.
I think it has gotten worse. But one of the things that I am delighted is that because we're a much more, I think, open society today than we were 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, I see online the Quad Squad. So there are support groups out there online that are on Facebook that you have to join to be a member of it, but that deal with the issues that we're going through. And I would love to see more community gatherings of particularly women with spinal cord injury or other disabilities come into our own more than they have. Now, one of the things, I agree with you, Vicki, about airlines, but Chicago is now fully accessible in transportation for buses, the Ls and the subways. It's been a huge step forward. The more that we can encourage that, the better. So one of the things that I do, because I do still drive, but I live in the city and I take buses everywhere I can, partly because I want to make sure that we use the system, and partly to let other people know that we need these systems. And I think there's been, you know, a lot of progress in that field. In terms of the future, a greater, I'd like to see a greater acceptance of self, individuals. I do see that there's a tremendous disability arts and culture that has grown and become more enlightened. And so I'm always eager to promote arts for people with disabilities and whatever they want to pursue. I'll have to give some thought, Rebecca, to your question. It's an important question.
Well, I think, you know, if I pick out a little bit of what you both said is, you know, finding support, kind of what you mentioned earlier, whether it is in person, through the arts, or through whatever your interests are. You mentioned some Facebook groups, and, you know, I know which groups you're referring to, and those are, you know, moderated by young women with spinal cord injuries. That, for me, my hope is that they continue to talk about these subjects, like you said, and that with that, there's more information available to us, rather than feeling alone and that isolation that we talked about earlier. Mary in the chat also says that the Greater Boston chapter of United Spinal has a spinal cord injury and disability women's meeting. And through this series as well, you know, that's our hope, that we're able to have these conversations, that women can participate, they can listen to these webinars, they can participate in the small groups. You know, hopefully we can have some more in-person events soon. But yeah, I appreciate the time that you both took today to talk with us. And any last thoughts before we wrap up?
I kind of say, you know, go out there, make a lot of noise, get them.
I love it.
What you started with backbones and how that's grown has been phenomenal. And I just encourage more of it.
We have a comment from Misty that says, I love your thoughts, Ginger, about riding public transportation, because it's true. If they feel like people are not using it, they can't justify funding it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what, just to, responding to that, what I am finding is, I remember years ago riding a bus in New York, and somebody got on the bus and said, oh, why don't you get off? This is a very crowded bus. And other people on the bus said, hey, buddy, why don't you get off? I just felt horrible. These days, there is no issue. Public, they know they have to put up the bus seats. If I get on, people move. Very accepting and accommodating. And that's such a huge step forward from what used to be. So I think that's part of the attitudes that have changed. And so thank you for that comment about buses. I love them.
Well, we're getting some thank yous from the audience as well. Thanking you both for sharing your story and for giving such good advice. And again, I am really happy to have been in conversation with you both. And I'm going to invite Emily back on to join us and wrap up our conversation tonight.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for the two of you being our guest speakers tonight. And thank you to all of our participants who joined us live. On the screen are upcoming webinars, which are open to the public. April, we are navigating caregivers and relationships. In May is Pathways to Motherhood. June is pregnancy. And in July, we're going to talk about preventative healthcare. Please remember that if you are a woman with an SCI, we are hosting our small group discussions. Please sign up for those. Or if you know a a woman that may benefit or enjoy participating in our conversations, please send them our information. You can take a few minutes to fill out that survey. Rebecca, can you drop that in the chat one more time for me? Yeah. We really appreciate you guys taking the time for that. And this recording will be available on YouTube for you to be able to share with anyone that you think might benefit from it. Thank you so much, Vicki and Ginger, for being our guest speakers tonight. We value your time, and I hope that everybody has a great night.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Nice to see you again, Ginger.
What wonderful to see you, Vicki. Really is.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.